Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are talking about the release clauses your club must activate this summer. Coming up, which club suits Liam Delap best?
You think about Fulham, you think about Brighton, both teams who I think need to invest in a centre forward, if not this summer, next summer.
Why Liverpool is the perfect destination for Rayan Cherki, especially because Harvey Elliott feels like he's not really a slot man. And is Cunha worth the price for Man United?
I think really 50 million is the max you'd want to pay.
Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, and joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today, we have Mina Ibrahim, content creator in the men's game, in the women's game. She's everywhere. Welcome back to the Lowdown. Mina, how are you?
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks
Great
for
to
having
have
me.
you. Great to have you.
There's a lot happening in the football world.
Yeah, and it's been a tricky time for the Reds.
No, we don't have to talk about that today. There's no need. I'm happy to not talk about it.
Did you not watch the Lyon game last Thursday, did
What, that
you?
famous comeback?
The
Come on,
famous
huge comeback, man.
Are you guys back then?
I
Not
don't
yet.
know. I think
no.
you just got to hold on to those moments, haven't you? And you know, it's all about the Europa now, isn't it? Like, I don't think Amorim's not playing, full strength teams in the Prem. So yeah, roll on Bilbao.
Are you confident ahead of Athletic Club, Mina?
I think it'll be tricky, but I'm hoping it's the magic of Europa League. United unbeaten. They always pull it out this season, so it's hard to not believe. But my worry is that we get past them and then just capitulate in the final.
Against
Yeah.
Imagine, that would be a great storyline. But yes, the Europa League and the Champions League back next week. We'll be doing a Champions League preview next week on the Lowdown, dropping earlier in the week, so keep an eye out for that. But today, guys, we are talking about release clauses, because there are so many top players around Europe that have a release clause that your club could activate. We're going to go through all the players with those release clause and suggest some destinations for them. Mina, let's kick off with Dean Huijsen of Bournemouth, because this guy is in the news seemingly every single day, and for good reason.
And it's not just that, he's also doing interviews about where he potentially wants to play as well. But if we think about the release clause and the price tag that he has, I think that's good value for money based on the product you're getting. And also on the flip side, the fact that Bournemouth brought him for 12 million, they're making near enough a triple profit on him. There are a lot of teams that could do with him, but in terms of what he offers, I think it has to be a team that are comfortable playing out of the back, a team that keep the ball ticking, similar to what Bournemouth do. He's got Gyokeres on his left to kind of get that ball forward, and it's not just what he does on the ball, because he plays great balls over the top. He links up very well with the midfield, can drive the ball forward as well. But it's also his defensive attributes. His ability to play 1v1, his ability to read the game very, very well for a 20-year-old. In terms of destinations, obviously today there's reports about Chelsea wanting him. I've seen reports of maybe Liverpool could look at him as a long-term replacement for Virgil van Dijk. I just don't understand how Real Madrid do not want him, despite the fact that he's coming out in interviews every international break saying that his dream is to play at Real Madrid. And
calling for them.
Real Madrid haven't paid big bucks for a centre-back since they bought Militao how many years ago, and they're investing in the right areas, bringing in attackers, bringing in midfields, but it looks like they're neglecting that centre-back position where, the Militao off of 2 ACL injuries, Alaba running his contract down, Rudiger, who's an aging Rudiger, still good, but also picking up injuries. How could you not want a player that wants to play for you when you look on the other side of Spain, where you got Kudus at Barcelona? I just don't understand how they don't look at it and think, let's pay the release clause.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Dutch-born, but representing Spain, says he feels Spanish, and now he's broken into that Spanish national team as well. It does feel like a really nice fit, and for him, obviously, going from Bournemouth to Real Madrid, that's kind of a dream move for any player. I agree with you. I think up until a few weeks ago, and there's been maybe 1 or 2 mistakes in recent weeks, but he'd been pretty much faultless up until the start of April. Really, really impressive. Him alongside Zabani, I think it is probably the most underrated duo in the Premier League, although Huijsen is getting a lot of credit, and rightly so. And it was really that loan spell at Roma last year under Jose Mourinho who spotted, the talent that he's got, that led to this move to Bournemouth. And Juventus must be cooking themselves as well, because Bremer did his ACL in October time. They have to bring in Lloyd Kelly on an emergency deal in January. It's just, that's been a disaster of a move. But Dean Huijsen, Mikey, I mean, we were talking to Matisse last week, and he was suggesting that he potentially wasn't someone that he was so keen on, which I was personally quite surprised about. I really backed Matisse on most of his opinions on that show. I thought he was a brilliant addition. But that did slightly surprise me, because Wesley Fofana's had so many injury issues. It feels like a very logical right-sided centre-back fit.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's great about Huijsen as well, is that he can play on either side. Like, he's comfortable. He's completely two-footed. And so, yeah, like having him alongside Levi Colwill would potentially be a match made in heaven. I guess from Huijsen's perspective, do you want to be thrust into a big side which instantly needs an uptick defensively or instantly needs an upgrade defensively? Because, yeah, like Mina's saying, 20 years old and performing amazingly in a Bournemouth side, but there isn't that same spotlight on you there. If if the Real Madrid offer did come in, the advantage of that is that he wouldn't necessarily have to be the fulcrum of that defence straight away. Like, you do still have Rudiger and Militao there, who, when fit, are the first choice pairing. Asensio has done well when called upon this season as well, and so there is, you're going into the pecking order there and not expected to, perform straight away. Whereas, as we've seen this season with like Lenny Yoro at Man United coming in at 18 years old for a big price, he's instantly expected to perform, and the narrative around him already is like, oh yeah, it's been a bit disappointing. It's like, well, yeah, he's 18 years old, and I actually think he's had a couple of bad games, but like he's also played a fair amount of football now and has been pretty solid throughout. So that kind of spotlight on a player that young in defence, where you're always going to have some bad games, especially in a dysfunctional side. That would be the worry for me with Huijsen. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, Chelsea, you do run that risk, whereas at Real Madrid or perhaps Liverpool, where you can basically just be the first choice backup to either Konate or Van Dijk.
And there's speculation about Konate leaving as well.
Yeah, so I think there's options there as well, and even at Liverpool, even if Konate, say, were to leave, there are still other options there, aren't there? Kwanzaa, who's not had the best season this year, but was brilliant last season. I thought, that there's less pressure on you there. Whereas with Chelsea, I think, he would go in and he'd instantly be seen as someone who needs to elevate that side.
Yeah. Absolutely right. We're going to move on to the first of many forwards in this episode. It is forwards and release clauses, really. There are other positions covered, of course, as well. But Mikey, let's talk about Liam Delap.
Yeah.
Ipswich, for all intents and purposes, down, but he has shone in parts, and there's a very attractive release clause in there.
Yeah, a great release clause. I mean, yeah, with them probably almost certainly getting relegated now, he's going to be available for £30 million. And since that news dropped, he's been even more prevalent in the back pages, in the rumour mill. Even before then, he was being linked with almost every top club. And yeah, I mean, one of a number of centre forwards that we've spoken about a lot recently, and one of a number of centre forwards who have release clauses this summer. He just hasn't really put a foot wrong at Ipswich. 12 goals and 2 assists in 32 league appearances. Ipswich have only scored 33 goals this all season, and they rank 18th in almost every other attacking metric. So when you look at that and you look at the range of goals that he scored, you look at the different areas of the pitch that he has had a decisive impact in, he's very much not just a penalty box forward. It's not surprising to see him linked with most prominently Man United and Chelsea, whose attacks have been very dysfunctional this season. So for context, he's been involved in 42% of Ipswich's total goal output this season, which is incredible. At Man United, Bruno Fernandes has been involved in around 45% and has scored, of course, fewer goals than Delap as well. Has obviously more involved on the creative side of things with 9 assists, but that's the kind of level we're talking about in terms of being able to, just like carry a team, carry an attack on his own. So yeah, in terms of like an audition, first season in the Premier League, there's not much more Delap could have done. He's getting more XG per 90 than Brian Mbeumo, who's, set to breach 20 goals this season at Brentford, has had an amazing campaign. So yeah, it's not surprising to see him linked with top clubs. My one worry, again, a little bit like with Huijsen, is that he's still super young, still only 22, of course came through the Man City academy, so is primed to play for a top club. But I just think with the Premier League as it is right now, I just think, if you're the number one teams you're linked with are Man United and Chelsea, I just think, is there the possibility of looking at clubs, the more classic mid-table clubs who are actually have a clear upward trajectory at the moment. You think about Fulham, you think about Brighton, both teams who I think need to invest in a centre forward, if not this summer, next summer. Danny Welbeck's not getting any younger. They don't really have another natural centre forward in there. Joao Pedro may well leave the club this summer or next summer. Rutter's been linked with elsewhere as well. And you just think about the kind of players that you'd be linking up with at a club like Brighton. Matoma doesn't look like he's going anywhere. Adingra and Minter as well are back to stay at the club this summer as well. And I just kind of think as another stepping stone, that could be really great for him coming into a side where you instantly have a clear path to being the number one striker, and just everything's in place for you to score a ton of goals. Whereas if you go to Chelsea or United, well, at United you probably would start, but yet to see what United are actually going to do with that attack this summer.
Not the most creative side.
It's not at the moment, and there's just a lot of unknowns about what that attack's going to look like next season. At Chelsea, I think probably a better fit than United, just because there's less pressure on you because you've got Nicholas Jackson there, who's a slightly different kind of striker, but you can kind of dovetail there. You can take minutes off each other. But again, if Nicholas Jackson has a great start to the season, then suddenly Delap's not getting much game time at all. So, and this is no disrespect to someone like Danny Welbeck, of course, who has been amazing for Brighton this season, but he is getting older, and I think there are going to be minutes there at Brighton next season. So that's probably who I'd go for. He's been linked with Everton as well, who again, Calvert-Lewin's leaving this summer, and if they can make some good investments this summer, and with Moyes staying there, I think there's possibilities with Everton. I think they will get better, and then you'll see his value increase as well. I guess from the player's perspective, it's just if you have one of the big guns coming for you, even though Man United especially are in complete disarray at the moment, you don't really know if they're going to be challenging for European places next season or not. As a career move, how many opportunities do you get as a striker? It's not that often that a number of top teams are looking for a centre forward. So as a career move, I guess you could see why he would want to take that leap. But I think the sensible option would be to go to one of the clubs that are known for developing players more.
You can see the attraction of Everton and a brand new stadium as well. The thing with Everton is, although Moyes has said, we could be next season's Nottingham Forest in terms of challenging for European places, it's rare to see a side move into a brand new stadium and instantly hit the ground running. It does tend to take 6 months to a year or so. So let's see what happens there in terms of a move there. But you can see the attraction from an Everton perspective. And then for Newcastle, I can also see Newcastle potentially entering the fray as well. The fact that Callum Wilson's now 33, they clearly need a backup to Alexander Isak. And yes, it's not the most attractive role to go and be Isak's backup, but it feels like if Isak doesn't leave this summer and has another 25-goal season next year, I can't see Alexander Isak staying at Newcastle forever. So a season being his backup and then going to be the number one there, I think could be quite attractive too.
I think it's risky though.
You'd rather see him take regular football.
I think so. After this season at Ipswich, there's not a reason why he should. He deserves that now. He's been one of the best centre forwards in the league in a really poor Ipswich side. No disrespect to them, they've just risen too quickly. And I just think at Newcastle they're just. Yeah, maybe Isak won't stay there forever, but the cards, the cards are kind of stacked against him. Newcastle can just name their price with him, and how many clubs have the kind of money that they're after? I just think there's no guarantee that Isak would leave. So yeah, I think with Delap you've got to go somewhere where there's that clear route.
Well, plenty of options there for Liam Delap. Just quickly, Mina, before we move on. In terms of United strikers, how much do you put down to it being Højlund and Xerxes being young players that are developing, that are low on confidence? And how much do you put it down to the poor service?
I think it's a bit of both, because you saw last season with Højlund what he can give you, even creating his own opportunities. You look at this season, it's a different system for him, and then Joshua Zirkzee obviously having a couple of months with Erik ten Hag, then again a new system. I think Joshua Zirkzee was never a 9, and I think it's very evident in the way that he plays for Manchester United now, and maybe that's on United's part of signing him as a 9 and then transitioning him into this 10, this one of the attacking 10s that they use. In terms of just quickly on Liam Delap and Højlund, because I see a lot of discourse about, if Man United sign him, it's going down the path of Rasmus Højlund. I don't think that is remotely similar. I think Liam Delap at this stage of his career, even though he's only 22, is a much better player than what Højlund was when Manchester United bought him from Atalanta. And I also think that, unfortunately for Rasmus Højlund, there's two things. I think, he skipped a stage before he joined Manchester United. I think there should have been a developmental stage going to another club before he went from Atalanta,
or even just one more year,
or one more year of consistent
months,
starting as a striker, as a lone striker, especially coming into United to play as a lone striker. And I also think for strikers at Manchester United, they do not get the luxury of patience. You have to come in and hit the ground running. Right now, with Lenny Yoro and Patrick Dogu, people are a lot more patient with them than they were with Joshua Zirkzee a couple of months ago when he was getting booed when he was got substituted against Newcastle. Strikers don't get that luxury, which is why, for me, we're going to come to other strikers, but I do think Liam Delap for 30 million is a great price. He is definitely his product, or the potential product he can be. I think eventually he'll become England's starting striker. But in terms of the strikers that are available right now, and for the price tags that they're available, Man United have to take that risk of, paying big for the best strikers that are available rather than going down another developmental stage. Because just quickly, Man United haven't signed a striker in their mid-ish 20s since Lukaku. And then since then, it's been either old strikers or young strikers.
So I guess on that subject, while we're on the subject of Man United and strikers, is there a striker out there this summer who you would be the number one, would be your number one target?
For me, my number one target would be Victor Osimhen.
Okay.
I think he is one of the best strikers available in the market in a summer transfer window where quite a lot of teams will be looking at strikers and looking at target number 9s and, big game strikers, and a striker that's going to come in and give you 20 to 30 goals in all competitions. And I know a lot of Man United fans seem to have this little PTSD of overpaying for players. But for me, Victor Osimhen should not be compared to, the overpayment for Antony or the overpayment for Rasmus Højlund, or even the overpayment for Mason Mount. Because with Victor Osimhen, you know what you're getting. It's literally it's on the cover. 26 years old for that release clause. And we're going to get to other players who have even higher release clauses than him. 29 goals in the Turkish league. But even just considering the fact that he helped Napoli to win a title, and despite the fact that, there was a little fallout on that side, there was no argument that at that point he was the best striker in Europe. And then the following season, he didn't have, a prolific one at that level, but he still had a very good season. And if he comes into Manchester United, I saw a clip of a goal that he scored this week for Galatasaray, and he creates it for himself. From the penalty spot, he manages to get a bullet of a header in. And I look at Man United players and I think, who could even do that right now? I think they might injure their neck trying to do that. So for me, with Man United, Victor Osimhen has to be, because if the best strikers are available, you go out and you pay the money for them. The topic of wages is always a conversation, and I understand Man United are trying to fix this wage structure that was, heavily impacted by the previous management. But you pay the best players, you pay them the best money. You see Liverpool have done that with Van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, and I'm not comparing him to them, but I'm saying, they valued them, and so they paid them accordingly. And, Man United cannot afford personally to go out and bargain on another potential striker, because they cannot be breaking or trying to break the 45 goal mark in the Premier League again next season. That's ridiculous.
I guess my one concern with Osimhen is, would he actually want the move? I know there's talk that he would be open to a move to United, but it's just if there are better options on the table, it's tough. I think, if Osimhen wants the move and you can get it done, then it kind of feels a bit like a no-brainer for United. Maybe you just end up spending less on your other targets and just prioritise the centre-forward position, because he's such a guarantee of goals. His movement in the box, would transform that attack, I think. But that would just be my one worry, is spending that much, or going into the market for a player like that when there are probably better options on the table for him.
Yeah, my worry about him is that Saudi Arabia come back in for him. They're obviously not going to get Mo Salah now this summer. They probably want a statement signing once again. There was he was very close to joining them last summer as well, before going to Galatasaray. And that Chelsea move falling through, whether that was Chelsea's fault, his own fault and his agent's fault, or Napoli's fault, it did feel like that was a real opportunity to join a club like Chelsea. And now, having not wasted a year at Galatasaray, but definitely been out of the limelight to the same extent, if you're getting offered just an eye-watering, just mind-boggling amount of money to go to Saudi. I really hope he doesn't take it personally, not because of disrespect to the Saudi league, even though it's not as clearly as big a watch as the rest of Europe's top 5 leagues, but just because there is so much potential in there. And when he is fit, I just do think he's one of Europe's best. So I hope he stays in Europe for now. Let's talk about Benjamin Sesko as well. There is supposedly a sliding scale of release clause, which is dependent on the games played and goals scored by him. Obviously, we don't have information about the exact amount that would be, but it could be as low as £58 million, supposedly. Now, you imagine RB Leipzig's ability to hold on to him is very much tied to their Champions League pursuit and qualification. So at the moment, they're 4th, but there's just 4 points between them and 8th. So similarly to the Premier League, the Bundesliga's race for 4th places, unlike 5 last year, which got Dortmund into it, is very, very tight. Sesko is just 21. So in many ways, he's more attractive than Osimhen and Gyokeres because you're getting a better return on investment. You might be able to sell him for more than £58 million, you'd have thought, if the move goes well in 3-4 years' time. I see all those things, and his goal record at Leipzig and Salzburg beforehand is really pretty impressive. Last year, he scored 18 goals. He's already scored 20 this year. But looking underneath the surface, there are slight things that worry me about Sesko, in that he doesn't take a lot of shots, and he's playing for a side that thrive in transition and have done for a long time. And you've looked at the struggles of Timo Werner transitioning from RB Leipzig to the Premier League. You've looked at the struggles of Christopher Nkunku, a lot of that injury related and a change of system, obviously. And even to a certain extent, Dominik Szoboszlai as well. And Leipzig players, whilst it's super attractive to get these incredibly fit, tactically versatile players that are, physical monsters, sometimes it's not the smoothest transition. And for Sesko, particularly if he joins an Arsenal who have close to 60% possession, playing it in often against deep blocks, and he just won't get the same level of opportunity or similar type of opportunity that he did at Leipzig. And you look at 2.6 shots per game, that's not very high for a player playing for Leipzig. Just 1.1 shots on target. His XG per 90 is the same as Luis Diaz, who hasn't been unbelievable in the latter part of this season, let's say, as well. He doesn't bring anything particularly creative to the table either. And I think he's a very, very good ball striker. But I've been surprised by some of the chances that he's missed this season. In some ways, I think Openda has been the more impressive finisher for Leipzig this season. Like his shot creating actions this year, 1.9 shot creating actions, so the shot or the pass that leads directly to the shot, is the same as Jurriën Timber and Emerson Palmieri at West Ham. That is something that would concern me if you're spending around £60 million on a player playing for a Leipzig side that create a lot of opportunities in transition, that have always had very high shot numbers. And yes, they've struggled this year, and Marco Rosa was fired, etc. But there are warning signs there for me. And yet I do see the attraction for a club like Arsenal, if it was to be Arsenal, given there is a sell-on value there and the fact they've chased him for so long. The interesting thing is that there was reports last week that Man United have remained in contact with him since him and his agents rejected the club a good few years ago now. Christopher Vivel is now United's head of recruitment. He was at Leipzig beforehand. He brought him to the club. He also played a role in bringing in Nkunku and Szoboszlai, etc. So he's very much sort of created the Red Bull strategy. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, Mikey, from a Man United perspective, I suppose Man United aren't in the position, but beggars can't be choosers. When you're close to the relegation zone than the top 4. Yeah. But do you have the same reservations about Sesko?
Yeah, I think United. I think Sesko just doesn't. He doesn't fit either thing, does he? He's not particularly good value at this stage for a striker who is yet to consistently score, double figures season on season, and he comes at the same price of like Osimhen or Gyokeres. Whereas someone like Delap, who, is a bit, still, there's certain unknowns to him and that he's not been in the Premier League very long. At least he comes at a smaller price. And then you look at someone like Jonathan David, who I spoke about a few weeks ago. He hasn't, for whatever reason, his name hasn't been touted around as much recently, so there may be a reason that we don't know for that, but he's available on a free. I just think Sesko's too much of a risk for a club like Man United. However, for a club like Arsenal, whose attack is very well functioning and they just need someone who is a bit more on it, a bit more of a natural goal scorer than what they've currently got, I can 100% see why they're interested in Sesko. I think there's an argument to be made that while his numbers at Leipzig have never been super amazing, at least in terms of his shots and XG. Maybe that's because the Leipzig system actually isn't perfect for him, and maybe he would thrive in more of a possession-based side where he can use his physicality a little bit more when breaking into the box.
Got a great
I think, someone like Lois Openda is perfect for a transitional side, right? I kind of feel like Sesko is he's still waiting. He's an amazing striker still waiting to happen, and it just feels like Leipzig maybe just isn't. Even though he came through the Red Bull system, actually, like his physical attributes maybe would be suited better elsewhere. And I think that's why, it's the kind of Erling Haaland effect, isn't it? Every club wants a big centre forward now, a big, strong, fast centre forward who can strike the ball really well. Sesko kind of fits that. And that's why Gyokeres is also, obviously his goal output has been amazing as well, but that's why he's so attractive to Premier League clubs too. So I kind of see it, but at the same time, like when you're comparing him to like Osimhen, Gyokeres,
much rawer.
Just the output just isn't quite there, and obviously he's really young. But for that same price, I just think most clubs looking for a centre forward at the moment, they want instant results, and that's where I do, I do get where you're coming from, Dukes, and that you don't have that yet with Sesko. You really need to mould him. Whereas, the other players on the market at that price, guarantee you goals, whatever, no matter what.
For sure. Right, Mina, let's talk about a player that everyone saw in full effect last week in Rayan Cherki. Amazing display in both legs, really. Very, very attractive, supposed £25 million verbal release clause. What do you make of him? I mean, what an exciting talent.
An amazing price tag for, I think, any club. I think I actually don't think there's a specific club that can go for him, because I feel like a lot of people would be intrigued by the price tag. 21 years old, 12 goals, 18 assists in about 40 games this season for Lyon. And it's not just, the kind of player that he is. I think it's also his technical ability. It's ridiculously good consistently. Like, I feel like in the first leg in particular against Manchester United, until his goal, a lot of people felt like he didn't have any impact. But if you had actually watched the game, and in comparison to the 10s on the other side of the pitch, you would have seen that he had consistent impact throughout. And obviously, second leg, he blew Manchester United out of the water. Just in terms of what he offers, he wins fouls regularly. He's both-footed. Come on, there's not many players that are both-footed, especially when it comes to like taking set pieces. I think he can flourish in a team, for me, that is not a very rigid system. His people like to talk about, and I don't really like it when they talk about footballers and work rate and he doesn't track back and defense. I feel like he's a luxury player, and those kind of players are exciting for me to watch, because when they have the ball, it's going to be something exciting. It's going to be exhilarating. It's going to be borderline Jogo Bonito football, and you want to see that stuff. Football has become so timid and so rigid that I think a player like Rayan Cherki, anybody should be all over him, but not the teams that have a specific kind of system in place where, you expect to defend with 11 and attack with 11. In terms of what he can offer, he can evade pressure very well. He's very good on the ball. He can navigate and operate through the tight spaces. And I thought about the idea of Real Madrid after watching them against Arsenal. Obviously, I know they got Arda Güler as well, that doesn't really feature as much as maybe he would hope to. But, in terms of maybe where Rodrigo's future is with Real Madrid, could he be an answer or an option for them on that right-hand side? Because he offers something completely different to Vinny, to Mbappe, to even Bellingham. And, Bellingham likes to be this box-crashing midfielder. Could Rayan Cherki then operate in the middle spaces if he's coming off of the right? If he is coming off of the right, is he's able to go at his fullbacks? He's able to, get double-teamed quite often, which would open up a space for a teammate. I thought of Liverpool as well. I think Liverpool would be an amazing destination for him. I would love him at Man United, let's be honest. But I can't sit here and link everyone to Manchester United. But yeah, I've seen quite a few teams are in for him, but I do think it's going to be a big European club that comes for him. And unfortunately for Lyon, the financial situation that they find themselves in, they could have sold him for a lot more, at least 40, but they have to kind of take the hit.
Yeah. It's been really bad timing for Lyon, hasn't it? Because Rayan Cherki has been... he's just been such a potential player for so many years now, and has yet, up until this season, didn't really have, that kind of world-class potential season that we've been waiting for since, 2020. And now it's come at a time when, Lyon have to sell for cheap. So it is really unfortunate for them, just as they're getting in gear on the field. But yeah, I do think, there's something about the Liverpool links that I do really love, just in that, because of his versatility, he can, he could potentially, if he develops at a fast enough rate, he could be that talismanic figure who then takes over from Mo Salah when Mo Salah eventually leaves the club, but offers something totally different to any of their central attacking midfielders. Him and Szoboszlai are so different in terms of the way that they play, and I mean that just makes that Liverpool attack even more unpredictable when you don't know whether Arne Slot's going to play Szoboszlai or going to play Rayan Cherki on the weekend, or even Curtis Jones, someone who's a bit more industrious. We haven't seen him play a ton of minutes on the left, but I think Rayan Cherki's good enough to play there on the left as well if needs be. So, yeah, I feel like Liverpool would be the one for me. As for Man United, I think you do need to put it out there because, they're currently heavily linked with Matheus Cunha, who's going to cost, over double the price of what Rayan Cherki will. And he's much younger, Cherki, and, just has so much more natural ability than Cunha, even though I do love Cunha as a potential move as well. But yeah, I think Liverpool would be the one for me if he was to go somewhere in England. I think if he were to go somewhere in Europe, then like Real Madrid would be pretty amazing. Even Barcelona to play, in the kind of Dani Olmo role, I think that would be a really good option as well. I think we spoke about Borussia Dortmund before as well. Like if he wanted a bit more of a stepping stone club, somewhere where he can be the absolute number one main man. I think there's so many options out there for him. And I think for that price, whatever attitude problems he may have had in the past, I think it's worth the risk because he's clearly matured this season. And sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dortmund looking for a bit of spark since Royce's departure in terms of their creative numbers for sure. Bayern were also interested in January apparently, and I imagine that's tied into whether they can get Florian Wirtz and the fact that Serge Gnabry's out of contract, Sane's out of contract, Muller's leaving. They do need some forward players, and with his versatility, I think he'd be a really good addition there as well. I totally get what you guys mean about Liverpool as well, especially because Harvey Elliott feels like he's not really a slot man or
may
a slot.
well leave this year.
Yeah,
I think he
so
might
I wouldn't
leave,
be surprised if Elliott left and Cherki arrived. Let's talk a little bit more about Matheus Cunha, Mikey, because this is a hot one this week. Again, it's Man United, but a number of clubs will no doubt be interested because although he's had some disciplinary issues this year, when he's been on the pitch for Wolves, playing in a similar system often to what he would be playing at Man United, this is a Premier League proven player, which Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said that they've made the mistake of not signing enough Premier League proven players in the past, and he knows the system. So for Man United, this is, and he can play a variety of positions as well. This feels like a really good signing. If they could get it done.
It's a good fit. It's a big fee. I think it's too big a fee for Matheus Cunha, given United.
What would be the max you'd want to pay?
I mean, I think really 50 million is the max you'd want to pay. But first of all, it's Man United. They're going to have to pay the release clause if they want him. I know United don't get beaten up as much in the market as they used to, but I just think that if Wolves are going to sell him, they're going to sell him for the release clause. Otherwise, he just doesn't leave. The advantage I think United have is that yes, it's said that other clubs are in for him, but there isn't another club in the Premier League that plays the system that Matheus Cunha is suited to. So I just don't see why. I just don't see why Arsenal or Chelsea or whoever else might be linked with him would want to spend that money on him personally.
I think Forest was linked to him a couple of months ago if they made Champions League football, but even then it's a different system.
I mean, maybe if Gibbs White goes to Man City, then they would. But again, different system. You've got flying wingers there, whereas at United, there's space for Cunha to be able to do what he does because a lot of the ball progression will go through the wing backs next season, and a lot of the creativity as well with crosses into the box will come from the wing backs. And as we've seen this year, Matheus Cunha is perfect at that. He drifts out to the left so much, but there isn't the pressure on him to deliver crosses from the left. Him and Aït-Nouri play so well together, and I think the early signs are that Dorgu can provide that width really, really well. His record in the Premier League is just second to none. 14 goals this season, 12 goals last season, 11 assists across the last 2 years as well. His progressive carries, are there to see on the field, but then also when you look at the stats, are super, super impressive as well. In fact, he's making more progressive carries per game this season than Martin Ødegaard is at Arsenal, which is pretty amazing given that Wolves average around 47% possession, Arsenal average around 57%. So as a club, as a team, they see far less of the ball. But when they do get the ball, it's going to Matheus Cunha, and he's making things happen. And you compare that to Man United, I think Bruno Fernandes is the number one ball carrier among central players at the club. When you take wingers out of the equation, he's averaging around 2.1 progressive carries. So in terms of someone who can really make a difference to United in transition, which is where they, under Amorim have been at their most dangerous, and generally where they've been at their most dangerous over the last few years. I think he can really take that attack to the next level. And then you throw into that his shooting ability as well has been amazing. He ranks among the top players in the Premier League for shots on target this year. Again, amazing given how unproductive Wolves have generally been. I think he has taken the same amount of shots on target as Alexander Isak has in fewer minutes than Alexander Isak. It's quite astounding, and probably takes more shots from outside the box, etc. But his finishing ability from outside the area has been great. Would be coming up against more deep blocks at United for sure. But I think, like you say, Premier League proven. I think United, if they are able to make it work financially, and there was a report this week that they apparently want to try and get Cunha and Delap done early in the window before they've even made a sale. If they could do that, then that would be a pretty good start to the window for United, if they can afford it. I think a lot depends on Rashford, on what happens there, because we've seen a lot of chat about him this week.
Need Villa to pay up?
Yeah, I'm doubtful whether Villa will pay up. That 40 million plus his wages. It's a lot. There's talk that Rashford is still holding out for a club like Barcelona, isn't ruling out staying at United. If I'm honest, I can see that rumbling on all summer. Just that fee, those wages, how it has generally been with Rashford in terms of finding a club for him. It takes a while. So I don't think United can rely on Rashford being done early. If they can get those deals done early without having to do that, without having to sell Rashford that early, then great. But I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning about Villa. I was doing some research about it this morning. Villa's top earners at the moment are Emi Martinez, Tielemans and Boubacar Kamara, who are on £150,000 per week, supposedly. Rashford's on more than double that. So you can see the consideration that they need to do before committing to Rashford, although he has looked like a player reborn since joining there. We've just got 10, 15 minutes or so left, so let's rattle through a few more. Mohammed Kudus has got an £85 million release clause. If I was anyone, I wouldn't be going close to that this year. I think he's coming off a really, really poor season, to be totally honest. And look, there's been a few injury issues at West Ham, obviously. Mikel Antonio having that horrendous car crash. Nicholas Füllkrug's not been fit. But Kudus, 3 goals and 3 assists in all competitions. 5 goal involvements in the Premier League. That's the same as Gvardiol, Mark Gehi and Onuachu of Southampton. Not good enough for a player with his reputation. Really, really not good enough. And it's not like he hasn't been available as well. He's been ranked 4th for league minutes in this West Ham squad, only topped by Kilman Wan-Bissaka and Jared Bowen. And I get why clubs are interested in him in the last couple of months or 18 months or so, given the fact he can play in midfield, on either wing, he can play as a striker. But I think for £85 million, you can do a lot better than Mohammed Kudus, at least on the basis of this season. If there was a possible destination, Newcastle have been looking for a right winger for a long time. Do they go for him at that price? I don't think so. Villa, again, the speculation that Leon Bailey might leave. Would he be their future right winger? Is Ollie Watkins' future completely secure there? Is Marcus Rashford's future secure there? Even Asensio, are they going to sign him permanently as well? They might need some forwards. Maybe they enter the fray for him. But £85 million just feels a lot for West Ham. And given the fact they've got him under contract until 2028 with an option for a further year, I doubt Graham Potter wants to see him go because he is one of the more talented players in that squad. But £85 million feels like a lot for Kudus this summer. So I'd stay clear of that. Mina, let's talk about Eberechi Eze because he's supposedly got a £68 million release clause. Similarly to Kudus, but not necessarily to the same extent, he's had a slightly difficult season as well. Where are you at with Eze? Can you see him moving this summer?
Personally, I don't think so. Just because I feel like for that price tag, you could get probably better in the market. I think Eze is a good player, but I just think 68 million, 7 goals, 11 assists so far this season, and also a lot of the players available in the market this summer, he is slightly older than a lot of the players that we've spoken about today. Him and Osimhen are the same age, and I think people always class him as a young player. They think of Eze and they think of like a 21 or a 22-year-old. He's missed 5 games this season, 17 in the last 2 seasons due to injuries, and I think he's on the more pricier side. I think also he flourishes in a role where he's got a main focal number 9. So if he was to go similar to like Kudus, could he go to like a Newcastle or a Villa? But I think, a lot of people were sniffing around him. Man United were sniffing around him last summer when Elise was also on the market, and Elise ended up leaving. And you look at the price tag Elise left for, and it's around the same price tag, or if not slightly cheaper than what Eze is available for. So I think some teams might try steer clear from that. And I also think, unfortunately, Eze plays in the right channel and through the middle. I think a lot of teams, if they are looking for wide players, they're probably looking for someone that is comfortable on the left. If Eze is able to do that consistently and regularly, you look at teams looking for wingers this season. Liverpool, Arsenal. I think they're looking more down the path of speedy wingers that can run at a man and get past, Semenyo, Nico Williams, those kind of wingers. So I actually don't see Eze leaving Palace this season, and I actually don't think he needs to, because I think he will. I think he'll get an England call up for the World Cup next year. Hopefully he has a good season next year to get that. But also it's just the release clause. I think a lot of teams might be like 60 something million. I could find better.
Yeah, he's at a great club in Palace as well. I know there's speculation around Oliver Glasner right now, but I know they've had a blip in the last few weeks, but generally since October time they've been brilliant. Mikey, let's chat some goalkeepers. Aaron Ramsdale, £25 million relegation clause. That's obviously going to be inactive because they're down, but do you see him having a move this summer?
Yeah, I was trying to verify. That's kind of the rumoured price. Not totally verified, but there is a relegation clause in his contract, and yeah, I mean, good thing that he put that in there, because I think he would have been really lost without it. I think it was a poor decision to go to Southampton for him. I totally get his reasoning. I do respect it. Like, wanting to be a starter wherever he is. He did a great job for Arsenal overall, I think, and just wasn't. He just isn't. He's not at the level to be a title-winning goalkeeper, but he certainly is a Premier League proven goalkeeper. And yeah, it's been a tough year for him. I think the one thing that's always let him down has been his shot stopping. Like, he's consistently let in more goals than post-shot XG suggests he should. This year, I think only Sarr, Verbruggen and Areola have a worse record than him on the shot-stopping front. But luckily for him, there are clubs that are in need of a goalkeeper this summer. There's chat about Bournemouth, him returning there, because Kepa, of course, going back from his loan to Chelsea this summer, Bournemouth are keen to keep hold of him, but he's got wages of around £200,000 a week. That is just like way above Bournemouth's, wage bracket. And to be fair, Ramsdale doesn't come cheap in that sense either. I think he's on around 100, 120,000 himself, but that's still 80k a week less. So that would be a possibility, I think, and Bournemouth are a team on the up.
Wolves have been looking for a goalkeeper for a long time.
Wolves as well, although I feel like, staying on the south coast would make a bit more sense for Ramsdale. But a team of Wolves standing that are on the up under Pereira as well, have been one of the form teams in the Premier League over the last 2 months. I think they will get better next year, at least if they can make up for the loss of Cunha if he leaves. And then you've got the bigger sides like United, Chelsea, even Newcastle, needing a long-term replacement for Pope as well, or even someone who can challenge him more robustly. Those clubs are in need of a goalkeeper as well. But I think from United's standpoint, I think there are risks with Ramsdale, the same risks, some similar risks that they had when signing Onana. So I just don't think it's really worth the money. Chelsea have got so many keepers on the books that I think they would rather, maybe bring back Petrovic than spend 25 million on Ramsdale. Newcastle similarly, is Ramsdale an upgrade on Pope? I'm not so sure. So yeah, feels like Bournemouth for me, or even he's been linked with Leeds as well. Ilhan Melia been out of favour recently. Big question marks over him, despite Leeds getting promoted. Leeds maybe would make a lot of sense as well. I think they are better equipped. Another scrap, but I think Leeds are better equipped than Southampton are next season. I mean, that's not saying much. That's not saying an awful lot, because playing under Daniel Farke, who has been relegated from the Premier League before, trying to play possession-based football. But
there's reports he might leave as well.
Yeah. So if that were to happen, then yeah, maybe that would be a difficult one. So yeah, I think Bournemouth would be my shout there if they can't get Kepa. I think Ramsdale would be decent there, playing in a side which, yeah, like great ball playing centre backs, great defence, of course. Potentially, Huijsen and Gyokeres leaving this summer, but yeah, that would be my shout.
Nice. Just on the goalkeeper note, Joan Garcia of Espanyol has a release clause as well, just £23.4 million. I was actually watching the highlights of them playing Valencia last night, as we record this at least, and some of the saves he was putting out were absolutely outrageous, and his long-range distribution as well was brilliant. Some of the balls he was picking out were sort of Edison-esque. And this year, he saved 77% of shots on target. That's only topped by Unai Simon, Spain number 1, and Jan Oblak, who's been probably La Liga's best goalkeeper of the last 10 years. When Jan Oblak has an amazing season, Atleti tend to win the league, to be honest, and he's prevented 6.5 XG. He was linked to Arsenal last summer. He was linked to Arsenal in January. Neto ended up being their backup goalkeeper. Neto's only made one appearance, which was that game versus Girona, where he had that sort of stinker and nearly got sort of... lobbed isn't really the right word. The shot just went past him and he was outside his box. It was a bizarre moment. But Arsenal clearly need a backup goalkeeper. If I was him, though, I'd want to be a number 1 somewhere, I think, as well. He's only just established himself at Espanyol. So I know you mentioned them earlier, but surely Newcastle are going to move on from Nick Pope and Dubravka at some stage. Maybe Nick Pope for another year. But yeah, Joan Garcia to Newcastle, I'd quite like to see. Let's talk about some of these other ones very quickly. I mean, Mikey, Nico Williams has got a very cheap release clause compared to his ability, but monstrous wages by all accounts.
Monstrous wages, yeah. It feels like a bit of a no-brainer. Arteta loves him. Arsenal, like, he'd be a great fit at Arsenal. It's just whether they want to pay, whether they're able to pay that release clause in full that needs to be done. And then the wages as well. I think that's always been a sticking point when Arsenal have been looking at him previously, and ultimately I think it comes down to Andrea Berta, of course, former Atleti sporting director, who's now got his feet under the table at Arsenal. Will him and Arteta's thinking match up in this sense? Seems like a bit of an unknown at this moment in time, but I would love to see him at Arsenal. I think he'd be an absolute hit there.
Play on either side as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. Can be that backup to Saka when needed too, and Martinelli can obviously fill in. He's had a really good end of season. Martinelli, again, like in terms of other Premier League clubs, Chelsea, bit of a risk, but would be amazing in that attack, or at least would elevate that attack from the left. Liverpool, if Luis Diaz were to leave, like, I think they're all strong options. But ultimately, if he wants to go to Barcelona, and Barcelona can make it happen,
I wonder.
Yeah, I think.
What do Barcelona do with Rafinha? Like, it's disrespect. Just on Rafinha quickly, because last summer there was pictures flying around the internet of Nico Williams in Rafinha's shirt, and he felt disrespected by that.
Yeah.
And this season, look at him having a Ballon d'Or season. So
amazing. Like, and I think, I don't think it's to disrespect Rafinha. It's just that if Barcelona can make it work, of course, we don't know whether they can make a move like this happen financially in the summer. They may well not be able to. But you just look at where Barcelona are at the moment, like they are, one of the 2-3 best teams in world football. And if you can have those kind of options, like, why not? Like, they need to have depth. They are going to be looking at wide talent this summer. They need to be looking at a centre forward as well to replace Lewandowski eventually too. But I just think, I think Nico Williams. It doesn't. I don't think Rafinha's form should necessarily be taken into account. I think he doesn't necessarily have to come in there, and he won't be usurping Rafinha. But like, just to have that option there, they're going to be playing a ton of matches next season, as they have done this year. I think like the top clubs need to be building super squads, and that's why the links are there if they can afford him. But yeah, as for Premier League, I think Arsenal feels like a no-brainer for him.
And finally, just before we wrap up, we need to talk about the other Viktor Gyokeres, who I've seen a lot of talk about Primera Liga strikers in Fabio Silva and Darwin Núñez, but I just don't think they're comparable to Viktor Gyokeres. He's 26, and his record there is just phenomenal. 90 goals in 96 games. That's Haaland levels at Dortmund, and obviously it's in the Primera Liga, but this year he scored more than double any other player in Portugal in terms of their league goals, which was 17 for Pavlidis. He's on 34 and also provided 6 assists. He's much more creative than someone like a Benjamin Sesko as well. I don't think he's necessarily particularly always the most aesthetic player to watch. It's mainly about his pace and his power and his determination to score goals. He's not particularly silky on the ball. But in terms of a sort of one-track instrument, straight to goal, get shots off. He's so exciting to watch. I'd love to see this guy come to the Premier League. Ornstein is reporting that Berta's a huge fan of him. Berta's signed some big physical strikers in the past for Atletico Madrid, namely Diego Costa, of course. I think he'd be a very smart addition for a club like Barcelona going forward as well. But can Barcelona afford all these players that we keep on mentioning? But they do need to eventually look behind or beyond Robert Lewandowski as well, although Ferran Torres has done a very good job as his deputy this year. He's really stepped up his game. I can see Chelsea entering the fray for Gyokeres, but there's been so many talented strikers that have gone to Chelsea over the years and just not quite developed. If I got the choice between Chelsea and Arsenal right now, I'd 100% go to Arsenal. So let's see what happens there. But it is going to be the summer of the victors, and Benjamin Sesko is going to be in this hat as well. Same with Liam Delap. So guys,
just very quickly, sorry, Wills, one more on the list. Just one word. Jeremie Frimpong, where could you see him going, given his release clause?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Xabi Alonso seems so close to Real Madrid now. He's constantly been linked with Liverpool as the club most likely. I don't know whether that was before Salah tied down to his new deal, because he's almost played more as a right winger than a right back. And he's so stylistically different from Trent Alexander-Arnold. And do they want to splurge that sort of money on the player of Jeremie Frimpong's calibre when they've got Conor Bradley coming through? But I am slightly concerned by the amount of injuries that Conor Bradley is picking up at the moment. So maybe that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'd be absolutely superb. I mean, a club like Inter Milan, if Denzel Dumfries left for whatever reason, like in a 3 at the back system, he'd be a frightening addition in Serie A. He'd be their best right wing back since Hakimi, who was phenomenal at Inter Milan and is now doing such a good job at PSG as well. But yeah, Jeremie Frimpong to Inter Milan. Let's see it happen. But guys, that has been the lowdown for another week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you mainly to the contributions of Mina Ibrahim. Mina, thank you so much. If the people have enjoyed watching you, which they no doubt have, where can they find your stuff?
You can find me on all socials, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, at Mina Football.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to comment on your dream destinations for all those players. Like the video, subscribe to Sky Sports Premier League, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.